everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Build and Scale Boldly podcast, the podcast for purpose-driven female entrepreneurs who want to grow their businesses with more profit and more ease. I'm Dr. Leti Alto, physician, entrepreneur, and real estate investor, and today we're going to be talking about why you don't only want to rely on your business to build your wealth, and how adding assets that cash flow on the side are so important. And specifically, we're going to talk about cash flowing rental real estate because that's one way that I was able to build wealth outside of businesses. And I want to talk about how female business owners can use real estate investments to build wealth on top of what they're doing in their business. Now, many of you probably have been told to reinvest every dollar that you make in your business back into your business. Or maybe you haven't even been told that, but that seemed to like the natural course of things. And you kind of got into this pattern that money that comes in ends up getting back reinvested in your business. And if you're doing that, you're definitely not alone. I think this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs do. But what I've seen over the course of my interactions with entrepreneurs is a lot of entrepreneurs are successful entrepreneurs. Maybe they exit a business, or maybe they even are doing well in their business, but then kind of have a lull where the business isn't doing as well. And what I see happen is people get into cash flow problems. And that's because they haven't built another source of cash flow outside of their business. Now, some of you I know are people who are working full-time jobs and you're building your business on the side. In that case, you do have two sources of income. Doing your job is trading time for money, but it is bringing one source, and then your business is a side income. But I'm specifically talking to all of you guys who, as your business becomes more of what you do for your income, and that shifts over time, and maybe even at some point you quit your day job and you're relying on your business income to ensure that you're building and investing outside of your business to build cash flow monthly. So when these times happen where your business reduces the amount of cash flow or income that it produces, or you exit your business, then you're not in a situation where you suddenly don't have income and you're forced to maybe start another business or to do something that you don't necessarily want to do. And I've seen people do that so many times that I felt like this was a really important episode to do early in my podcast to talk about how do you build a source of income outside of your business income so that you are never in a situation, no matter what happens with your business, that you really need cash flow and you're strapped for cash. Now, why am I going to be specifically talking about rental real estate? Well, number one is because I know it very well. I have built a significant source of cash flow outside of my businesses. And when I was working as a physician, I built my real estate portfolio to have income outside of what I was doing trading time for money as a doctor. Definitely real estate is something I'm super familiar with. I think there's actually a lot of reasons that real estate investing is such a good fit for people who are working in business, and we'll definitely talk about those. And then I'll talk about investments in general and alternative investments and maybe how you might think about changing your portfolio over time. Now, a quick disclaimer, I am a physician, entrepreneur, and real estate investor. I'm definitely not a CPA, financial advisor, or a lawyer. So when you're making your financial decisions, you definitely want to talk to the people who understand your situation and who are able to really advise you. So this is more of an education. This is more of a philosophical discussion, and take with it what you will, and then take it to your experts. And that's where you should decide on what you want to do with your finances. So let's initially talk about my philosophy on investments and how I invest. So for me, cash flow is king. And that's because cash flow is ultimately what's going to replace my income. So I remember when I was working as a physician, real estate was so appealing to me because I could see that it could produce monthly cash flow. So that's part of why I chose real estate investing. But thinking as an entrepreneur who has income coming in from my business now, one of the keys with investments is I want to make sure that I have another source of monthly income. Because as I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, when there are lulls in business, and it does happen because business does go in cycles, or when you exit your business, you want to make sure that you have some cash flow coming in every single month, not something that you have to go sell and that's the only way that you make income, but actually cash flow coming every month, because that's ultimately what's going to set you free and be able to support your needs month to month. I get a lot of my inspiration for this episode from Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I read that way back in 2015. And it was so transformative to me because one of the things he defines in there is about how employees trade time for money, but how entrepreneurs, or he calls them business owners who have a staff, or investors actually kind of separate themselves from this time for money trade and make money work for them. And the investments bring in money every single month, even while they're sleeping. In that book, Robert Kiyosaki defines assets as things that make you money every single month, and he defines liabilities as things that cost you money every single month. One of the things that means is that your primary home is actually a liability because you have to support your primary home by paying out every single month. And if something doesn't produce cash flow, let's say you have stock and you're kind of hoping that it's going to gain in value, but it's not producing monthly cash flow, then he wouldn't necessarily consider that an asset in the traditional method, right? You're kind of hoping that it's going to increase, but you don't have any control. I just want to give you guys that as a foundation of how I'm going to talk through assets and liabilities in this episode. Kind of an extreme one, but I think it's important to really think about what you think is an asset, what you think is a liability, and ultimately the goal to increase your wealth is going to build up your assets as much as possible and decrease your liabilities as much as possible. Now, I really love cash flowing real estate as an asset, and I'm going to talk to you about why. When you're starting a business, all of you know, if you've started a startup before, it's pretty challenging. You have to create an offer. You have to educate your customer on it or your potential customer. You got to go find some customers. You have to build all the systems and processes. You have to hire some individuals and train them. There's a lot of steps. There's a lot of risk. And a lot of times there's a lot of heavy lifting for you to do as the business visionary. Now, real estate's a little bit different because every time you buy a building, it's like buying a business that already is running. And so it's like if you went and bought a cash flowing business, that's what buying a building is like. And so what that means for you is you're buying a business that's already running. You already have customers, short-term rental or property you're going to turn into a short-term rental. There are a lot of people who understand what a vacation rental is and who want to stay in Airbnbs or vacation rentals. And so you already have this educated customer and you already have systems and processes built out. If you're going to use a property manager, for example, or if you're going to use a contractor, systems and processes already built out for how those individuals run their businesses, and they're already trained up, right? It's not like you have to hire a property manager and train them. They already have a property management company. They already have all the systems and processes in place. And so again, you're plugging into a system that's already running with individuals who are already trained up to do that system. And so it's really, really easy compared to doing a startup, and ultimately a lot less risk, not only because it's a tangible asset, but because you already have those customers and you already have those systems. And you're not starting it all from scratch. So that's part of why I think real estate investing is so easy to add on top of running a startup. The next thing I really like about it is that it really can be done on the side. When I started building my real estate portfolio with my husband, I was full-time as a doctor, but I could actually buy these rental properties. And because I could offload so much of the work to property managers and contractors and real estate agents and other individual members on my team, it wasn't like I needed to be there day to day. I literally, if I wanted to, could collect the rent payment once a month. And that's all I really needed to do once I got the property up and running. And so I think it's a really great opportunity to build something that's pretty easy to learn with all the systems and processes in place that's already running on the side and not have it take a lot of hours for me. The other thing I really love about rental property real estate is that there's so many different ways that you make money when you do it correctly. I often talk about the 6 ways you make money in real estate. And so these are cash flow. So that's the money you're putting in your pocket after you pay all expenses every single month. There's a renters paying down your mortgage. And usually that's like 2-3% that they're paying down your mortgage every single month. And once you have enough properties that are cash flowing, it actually adds up very, very quickly, this renters paying down your mortgage, because even though it's not money you see coming in every month, it is money that's kind of adding to your bottom line and increasing your net worth over time. The next one is immediate appreciation. And this is if you negotiate or maybe you act quickly and you get a deal where you buy that property, close on the property, and you have equity in it day one because you bought it at under market value. The next one is forced depreciation. And this is something you control where you increase the value of the property. And you can do this by making like smart upgrades. A lot of ways that we force appreciation is through rehabbing and improving the property itself. Sometimes it's just a matter of buying a property and increasing rents. Sometimes it's about decreasing expenses. So there's a lot of different ways that you can force appreciation of rental properties, all kinds of rental properties, from short-term rentals, single-family homes, all the way through large multifamily properties. And this can really increase the growth of your wealth very, very quickly and allow you to reuse the same money over and over and again using things like cash out refinances or selling the property in 1031 exchange. And this is a lot of how we grew our portfolio, is actually increasing the value of those properties with forced appreciation and then reusing that money and putting it into a larger property and kind of going bigger and bigger. The next one's tax savings. Real estate has some incredible tax savings, even if you're a passive investor. But if you choose to be an active investor and use something called real estate professional status or the short-term rental tax loophole, you have that opportunity to shelter W-2 income or 1099 income or even business income. And my husband and I did that for 7 years. We zeroed out our federal income taxes. And that was pretty huge, to not pay taxes on our physician salaries because real estate was helping us do that. And we even were able to shelter our business income as that grew using our real estate investments. And then, there's market appreciation, which is plus minus because you can't control it versus all those other things I just mentioned. And market appreciation happens when the market goes up. Real estate, like everything else, moves in cycles. You can certainly set yourself up to be more likely to get market appreciation, but it's not anything guaranteed. When you add up those 6 ways you can make money in real estate, that increases those returns in a really substantial way. And so when you add that to the fact that I really think it's pretty simple to learn, you can do it on the side. It's got all the systems and processes in place, and it's relatively lower risk, and it's a tangible asset. Like, it just makes a lot of sense to me that a business owner would get a real estate portfolio on the side. And so how do you do this? How do you start building this real estate portfolio? Well, I think, and this is again my opinion, one of the most valuable things you do is, instead of taking all that cash flow that comes into your business and either A, reinvesting it completely in your business, or B, taking as dividends to spend personally, I think that it's really valuable to automate a portion of those proceeds or take a piece off the top every single month and kind of put it into an investment portfolio that goes into your rental property real estate, or maybe if you're really into the stock market, or you have other ways, other alternative investments that are going to bring you in cash flow, that you're investing in those as well. But really kind of taking money off the table, even early on in building your business, even if it's a tiny little percentage, to be able to build up the cash flow machine on the side, so that, again, if you have any changes in your business, you have that cash flow that is your income every single month. Now, I did want to mention that, and you have to imagine the freedom that comes from having, let's say, multiple 6 figures of income coming in every single month on the side of your business, what that does for you and your pressure in your business, and what that does for you in kind of breathing space to be able to make that decision to maybe hire somebody who's a little bit more expensive when you don't necessarily know if you want to. If you have that income coming in and you don't rely on your business to support you and your family, really is freeing to be able to have that. Now, one thing I did want to mention, one other really important concept, I think, is that when you focus, it builds wealth, but when you diversify, it helps protect your wealth. And so when I think back about when I was just a doctor, right, and I had my income coming in as a physician, and that was really all I had for a source of income, I was very focused in my knowledge. I was a physician, but at the same time, I only had one source of income. Right. And because I had put so much focus and time and energy and effort and money into becoming a physician, I had a larger amount of dollars per hour coming in as a physician. Then I started building my real estate portfolio on the side. Now I had money coming in cash flow from my real estate portfolio. Now it was definitely diversified. So I didn't have as much concentration risk because I wasn't only relying on my income as a doctor. And so I had 2 sources of income. That was really great. I went very, very deep in real estate investing, achieved a level of mastery, built up up our portfolio. And at a certain point, probably when we had, I don't know, over 100 units of real estate, we started to say, hey, do we want to diversify outside of real estate? And of course, we had some stocks in our Ks, but we hadn't done a lot of alternative investing. We had really just stocks and real estate and then what we were doing with our business. And luckily, we've gotten to get a lot of financial training over the last 7 years or so and learn a lot more about alternative investments and how people invest. And one of the things that I've found very, very striking is that ultra high net worth individuals have a lot of their personal holdings of investments, upwards of, even 50, 60% in alternative investments. Whereas the average investor has most of their money or their investment money in the stock market, right? And in the stock market, they're really taught, hey, you are diversified in the stock market, so you're fine. But when you think about it, the stock market is just one way of investing. There's all these alternative investments out there, like real estate, like crypto, like, gold, or, there you can invest in whole life insurance. There's so many other ways that you can actually invest, but we are only taught that the stock market is the way to invest, and that's diversified. In the last few years, I've been trying to do more and more of what Ray Dalio suggests doing, which is have 13 to 18 different uncorrelated assets. And what uncorrelated assets are is if one asset goes up, the other one doesn't necessarily go up. When one goes down, the other one doesn't necessarily go down. And so when you think about, let's say, real estate in the stock market, if the stock market goes down, is our real estate prices necessarily going to go down? No, they may not at all. And so what he was suggesting is that you have a lot of uncorrelated assets that protects you when one asset drops in value significantly. Then your whole portfolio doesn't crash. So the situation that a lot of you guys are in, because all of us are taught this as, doctors or high income earners, is put all your money, all your savings in the stock market. But when the stock market crashes, which it will at some point, then you're going to lose a huge portion of your wealth. Whereas if you had it kind of spread over, let's say 10 or 15 different uncorrelated assets, you ride the waves a little bit better. And so for me, that's one thing I have been doing more and more in the last 7 years or so, is saying, okay, I'm not just going to only have my money in real estate investing and a little bit in the stock market. Let me buy some other alternative assets. Let me build some other alternative asset classes so that I can ride the wave a little bit better. Because again, focus creates wealth and builds wealth faster. But for wealth preservation, the diversification is really what you need to look at. When do you start diversifying versus focusing? That's ultimately up to you on what to do that. But I can tell you, looking back, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, most of my wealth was in real estate investing. And looking at where I have my assets today, I feel a lot more comfortable that I have wealth preservation at a different level than I did, 6 years ago. Now, am I at that stage that I want to be where I, have a ton of diversification? No, I still have a lot of my wealth in real estate, have a lot of my wealth tied up in businesses. But again, you have to decide what's right for you. I feel okay with how I've spread out my wealth right now. I'll continue to take steps to add more uncorrelated assets and diversify over time. It's something that I think about a lot, and I do take steps every single year to do that. And part of this is taking money out of my business to make sure that I have a cash flowing machine on the side of my business. My real estate's a big part of that, obviously, so that I can weather tough times in my business or be able to someday say, hey, I'm done. Let me sell this, and I still have cash flow for the long term of my life. Now, here is how one of my mentors, Keith Cunningham, who I've mentioned a number of times before on this podcast, says it. He says, the goal isn't just to get rich, it's to stay rich, right? So let's all focus, let's achieve mastery, let's build our businesses, let's build up our wealth, but let's make sure that we build another source of cash flow on the side, and potentially number of different sources of cash flow on the side. Make sure we have a truly diversified portfolio so we can weather tough times in our businesses, or someday be able to exit our business and still have cash flow coming in every single month to support us and our needs long term. So for a reflection question, I would encourage all of you to say, hey, what kind of cash flowing assets do I have right now, if any? And what do I want to start building on the side? What's something that might appeal to me that I wouldn't mind learning a little bit about that could build me my monthly cash flow? And if I'm going to take some money off the top of my business profits every single month, what percentage would I feel comfortable doing where I could take that to invest in assets that are going to make me cash flow and ultimately get to me me to the point that I don't need to rely on my business for my finances anymore. Now, if this episode gave you clarity or inspiration and you want to do something differently, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode of the Build and Scale Boldly podcast. And if you know any other bold women entrepreneurs who need this message, who could learn more about investing outside of their business, make sure to share this episode with them. And let's normalize growth, right? Let's normalize ease. Let's keep dreaming big. Let's keep building and leading boldly. And most of all, just keep building your businesses and changing the world as I know you all are. Finally, in closing, I wanted to mention I have a newsletter called The Flight Plan as part of Biara. It's packed with bold business insights and actionable tips. It's produced every single week on Wednesday. You can head to www.biara.com/The Flight Plan newsletter, and you can sign up there. We'll put the link in the show notes. Okay, I'll see you next time.